Welcome back to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast. This week, we were going through a whole bunch of old Dan Kennedy courses, and there's a course called Sales Mastery Unleashed, and there's a really cool 40-minute presentation of Dan's talking specifically on mindset. And so we want to bring that to you for this week's episode. If you are enjoying these episodes, again, please let other people know about the Magnetic Marketing Podcast, and that way we can get more subscribers and keep bringing you more amazing stuff from Dan for free. With that said, let's listen to this week's episode.
I don't think there's anybody that has had a bigger impact in the field of direct response than Dan Kennedy.
The legend of Dan Kennedy should be ignored at your own peril.
They're not really lessons, they're kind of laws that you live by.
Dan opened my eyes to what small business marketing looks like.
Dan teaches strategic direct response that is timeless.
His ripple effect touches people who don't even know his name.
The world as we know it was changed because Dan Kennedy became obsessed with marketing.
Welcome to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with your host, Dan Kennedy.
Hey, Dave D here from GKIC, and I've got with me Dan Kennedy. But we're not going to be talking about marketing today, Dan. We're actually going to be talking about mindset. And this is a topic I've really wanted to get in deep with you about, and I know a lot of our members do. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Happy to do it.
Okay, so let's get right into it here. I think a lot of people falsely believe that you don't think a lot about mindset, that goal setting and all that stuff isn't important to you, that you only care about the hard skills such as copywriting and marketing and things of that nature. Is that true? Let's get that squared away right from the very beginning.
Well, no, and I'm not sure you can separate really one from the other. And you know, if you frame it as hard skills and soft skills, that's like overly simplistic, right? I mean, and so to me, really, they're all skills. So self-management, mind management, time management, self-improvement, personal development, these involve hard skills just as does copywriting or marketing strategy design or selling. So how important has this been, the personal development aspect of what you do, the mindset, the goal setting, the time? How important has that been to your personal success? Well, and a lot, over 40 years, and people who do not know that about me are either deliberately taking a position that fits their own bias, or they don't know much about me. You know, they really haven't studied me, period. Because there's a rich wealth of material out there by me that in part and in a few cases in whole you would put in the mindset category. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of work with the Maxwell Maltz materials for a number of years. Psycho-Cybernetics is one of the all-time best-selling self-help, self-improvement books in the history of publishing, by best accounts, including all foreign editions and all privately published editions and so forth. The book has sold over 60 million copies. And so I did a update of the book, co-authored with the late Dr. Maltz, called The New Psycho-Cybernetics. I did an audio version of that with Nightingale Conant. If you look at the whole wealth segment of my work, the No BS Wealth Attraction book, the wealth seminars and products that are at the GKIC store, if you want to pigeonhole them, or you want to try and categorize their content, you would probably put about half of it into the mindset category and half of it into strategy and tactics category. So it's not that it's, if somebody paid attention, they would see that I'm a personal development, self-improvement, mindset practitioner and advocate, and at times teacher. And I look, if you give a box of the very best tools to somebody who does not know how to use them, that's pretty futile. If you give a box of the best tools to somebody who knows how to use them, but cannot get their act together, cannot get themselves organized, cannot discipline themselves, cannot motivate themselves, cannot get performance from themselves, then that's pretty futile. If you give a box of the very best tools to somebody who knows how to use them, but he won't use them, then that's pretty futile. So the idea that it's all about the tools is a very, very false idea.
So you mentioned Dr. Maxwell Maltz, but who else have been your major influence when it comes to the mental side of success, the personal development side of success?
Well, if you go dead and you go historical,
sure,
there's a long list. If you go more contemporary, my observing, borrowing, extracting, and assembling is still fairly eclectic. So I have read, study the metaphysical, almost woo-woo side of all this, discarding much, but finding some valid. So contemporary names you would have, Marianne Williamson.
I think people would be shocked by that, by the way.
There's the religious category of this, where there's overlap. Somewhat historical, the Norman Vincent Peale, Robert Schuller, side of things. Today you might put Rick Warren in there. You might put Joel Osteen in there. Historical, you put Reverend Ike in there. You have the sports psychology folks. You have the business psychology folks. You have the whole performance/implementation category of this, where you would find, for example, our own and my longtime friend Lee Miltier. Again, if you're going to pigeonhole her, that's kind of where you'd put her. And she does a great job in that category. Dennis Waitley belongs in that category. So, there's those folks. You have I would call it the strategy category. So there's goal setting in there. There's the management by objectives guys in there. So, this thing breaks apart into a bunch of subsets and a bunch of disciplines, and then very contemporary. When you read biographies and autobiographies, and even how-to books that are written by hugely successful people. So if you read Trump's Art of the Deal, or there's a book, I just finished it, and it is significant enough it's going to get 2 or 3 more forays, and I'll probably start recommending it aggressively soon. It's called The Education of a Value Investor, but it's less a book about investing and actually more about the life journey of this major fund manager, huge success. And if you read these books and you don't notice, you don't see the mindset elements, the self-management elements, you're just not paying attention. I am particularly interested in them and am looking for them. So I, for example, am not actually going to go make real estate deals. So the technical stuff in a Trump book, or even more so in a George Ross book, is actually of less interest to me than how these people think about what they do, about how they do it, about the world around them, and about themselves. So no different, I think, than an athlete, for example. As a copywriter, for example, if you use that, that's a performance. That's you've got to achieve a certain mental state. You've got to achieve a certain physical state. You've got to achieve focus and concentration. You have to have organized thinking. You have to have some stamina, because if you can only concentrate or sit in a chair for 15 minutes at a time, and then you got to go do something else, you're not going to make a living as a writer. So you have to be able to tap both your conscious and subconscious resources. There's some fairly esoteric elements to it. I write copy while I sleep. You give an assignment to the subconscious and let it do the work. And so there's some fairly esoteric stuff to it. A big category of mindset loops to stuff I deal with and teach, which is your intellectual and emotional relationship with money. And so regardless of what it is you do, salesman, manager, executive, CEO, negotiator, copywriter, whatever it is that you do, there's a personal peak performance element to it that has an attitudinal compartment. It has a belief system compartment. It has a performance compartment, and it has a mechanical or technical compartment. And pretty much anyone without the other is severely handicapped.
Got it. Wow, great answer. Do you actually set goals?
Yeah. Macro and micro. So virtually every day is scripted. So, I mean, you can argue, you call it what you want, goal setting, planning, whatever. So today is predominantly a phone day all day. From 7, I started at 7:20 this morning, and I'll end at 4:40. Be a little earlier than usual because I'm in an early race and I have to get to the track. But besides the lunch break, there has been today one 20-minute gap and one 30-minute gap. So for that gap, there were, if you want to use the term, goals. There was a finishing of 2 pages of a newsletter, for which there was 15 minutes allocated. There was successfully resolving something with one of the people who manages investments for me, which was allocated 10 minutes. So there was like 5 things that got done in those time gaps that were pre-planned and were goals for the day that, in part, I can judge the success of the day by how many of them got done and how many didn't get done, and whether or not they got done in the allocated amount of time to get them done. So that's like a micro example, right? Not quite as micro, but I mean, I don't do a consulting day with a client without some sense of the 4 or 5 things I'd like to have as outcomes by the end of that day. I don't just show up. On a more macro, I mean, so money, not only doesn't it grow on trees, but it doesn't sort of show up by itself. It at least has to be invited. And just like if you invite somebody over for dinner, it's better if you tell them exactly what day you'd like them to come and what time you'd like them to come and whether or not you want them to bring a bottle of wine. And, so the quality of the results we get is sort of related to the quality of instructions we issue. That's a form of goal setting. I mean, I'm managing not just income, but net worth, charitable contributions, a range of financial benchmarks for the year, for the quarter, for the month, for the week, for the day, and know whether I'm ahead or behind. If not day by day, certainly week by week, which then allows you to adjust before it's too late. The personal stuff, absolutely. I mean, to the point of fault. So I do very little for which, I can't go for a drive. This is completely foreign to now 40 plus years of conditioning. I can enjoy a drive, but I got to be going somewhere for a reason. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. But it's not an economic issue what my statistics are as a harness racing driver. Nobody's going to tell me I can't do it if my statistics are less than X, Y, and Z. So it only matters to me. And so people will say, don't obsess about that. Just go out and have a good time. Well, I don't really know how to do that. So there's goals for the year. There's goals for each horse. There's goals for the night. There's goals for the month. And I'm really only competing essentially with me.
Got it.
So I think that there are behaviors of highly successful people that have skill roots. They have philosophical roots. They have conditioned habit of thought and action roots. They have attitudinal roots. And I don't think that you really can create and sustain certain successful behaviors without a proper mindset attached to them. Nor do I believe by any stretch that you can have exactly the right mindset and that's it. And somehow, Lamborghinis will magically appear under your pillow.
Right.
So that school of mindset thought, I put in the bullshit category.
Got it. So I just want to one more thing on goal setting, and then I got a question which follows perfectly. So are you writing these goals down? Are you reviewing them? Are you following a particular procedure? Do you write them in the affirmative? How do you do it at the beginning of the year for your yearly goals? Exactly what are you doing?
All of that and more.
Okay.
Some of this stuff is up on as part of a storyboard. Some of it is in written form. Some of it is set, but is tracked. So if you had my business checkbook, you would see that deposits are by and large done once a week, because I'm not in a big hurry to get money in the bank necessarily. It doesn't have to get in there. So generally speaking, they're done once a week, and there's a tracking page in that checkbook of on schedule, behind schedule, ahead of schedule, towards revenue for the month, quarter, year, diversion from those deposits to wealth account activities, on schedule, behind or ahead for the year, diversion from those deposits, from those revenues and deposits to the giving account activities, charities, etc., ahead, behind, a pace for the year. Racing stats goals are in writing. Personal stuff, weight, health stuff, that kind of stuff. I'm forced to plan at least a year's calendar, a good hunk of it, block 12, 14, 16 months in advance. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is at least 4 to 6 months in advance. So there's a lot that gets locked down well in advance, leaving less and less and less flexibility, sort of mandating good planning. I mean, if I'm going to take 4 3-day vacations in a year, I pretty much have had to plan that 18 months ahead. And so there's a lot of it that is in writing, in one place, form, or shape or another. Then I think the non-written part so it loops back to what we want to put quotation marks around as mindset. I mean, it is really about how your orientation towards everything you do. So most people do most of what they do pretty thoughtlessly. They jump in and do. So, for example, most people take uncontrolled incoming calls. Okay, so I don't. So, with very rare exception, the only time I'm on the phone is if I have made a proactive call or I've had an appointment and now I'm getting on a call with somebody at an appointed time. Therefore, I have mentally prepared. So I may not have done it in writing, but I have mentally prepared for what the outcomes of this call are supposed to be. And I'm very rarely having a call without their supposed to be outcomes, because why have it? Right. I happen to like my own company, so I don't like need to get on the phone just to be on the phone. So most people are, not goal-oriented, if you want to use that terminology. Are not thoughtful, are not purposed in almost everything that they do, whereas really successful people very much are. And so I've observed that. I've seen it reflected in all sorts of philosophies. The Bible tells you to be thoughtful and purposed.
Right.
Buddha tells you to be thoughtful and purposed. Trump's book tells you to be thoughtful and purposed. The best literature on negotiation tells you to be thoughtful and purposed. So, it's obvious to me, really, that that's important, and so I made it important. So really, even though that's not in writing, it's a very goal-driven approach that for me is automatic. I mean, it's not, I don't really have to tell myself to do it, and I don't need a notebook with pre-done boxes in it to do it. That ended long ago. I sort of automatically do it.
Well, that's great. I mean, we could talk, really have a whole interview just about goal setting. One final thing on this, the thing you keep mentioning, which I think is which is missing from a lot of goal setting programs, is you keep talking about tracking as part of this, as part of your system. Really tracking it, not just writing it down, reading it, visualizing, but actually tracking what you're doing to get the result, to see if you're on track or not. I mean, I think that's really, really important that people get. You mentioned that you script your days. Do you have a daily success ritual other than scripting your day? And do you script it the night before? First of all, do you script your day the night before? Then second, is there anything else you have as part of your daily success ritual?
Well, most are scripted long before the night before.
Okay.
Or at least the majority of the day is. I don't have that kind of flexibility. And nor, by the way, do I want it. The rituals, well, the first one that most people don't master is like getting their ass out of bed. So, I mean, I'm pretty good at that. Most people actually use the snooze alarm, which is absolutely the dumbest invention ever. So you have an alarm clock, and then it's equipped with something so that you don't have to honor the alarm that you set on the alarm clock. It's a mystery to me. Then, in a sense, there's ritualistic performance of different functions. There's not one, so it's not like I'm going in the bathroom and saying my 12 affirmations while looking in the mirror. Not, by the way, there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
But no, it is more ritualistic regimens depending upon the activity. And so for a writing day, there is a ritualistic regimen. For a selling day, there's a ritualistic regimen. For going and giving a speaking performance, yes, there's a ritualistic regimen. And this is supported by the way you manage your associations, your support circles, whether you do masterminding or not, whether you have coaches and advisors or not, what kind of teams you have together to assist with X, Y, or Z, all of that. And, one of the best things somebody can do for themselves to improve their performance is to step up in the quality of the people that they're around, and to be more selective about that. So the one regimen, I guess, if you want to make it that is universal, it laps over everything, is very rule-driven, rigid control of access to me. And certainly most people do not practice this. And therefore they are mystified by their own lack of performance, their own lack of productivity, and they are equally mystified by somebody who is extremely productive and performs at a very high level.
I got so many questions for you here. We could make this a really long interview, but we can't.
No, I have a 4 o'clock call.
I know you do. I know. I got my clock right here. So what are your thoughts on visualization? Do you do it? Do you believe in it?
Yep. So Malta's theater of the mind is one explanation. Again, it's very important to understand I do not believe in it in the manifestation arena. So the idea that you visualize something clearly enough and often enough and with sufficient lust or desire, and that's all you got to do. And somehow it materializes. You have cancer and you visualize the cancer going away while you continue the same diet and smoking and behavior. No. Okay, so I don't believe in it like that. I'm not a white light aura guy. But most high-performance athletes, they've trained themselves with visualization, with synthetic experience in place of and along with real experience. And most sports psychologists and coaches, they may not use the word visualization. They may use terminology like simulation or synthetic experience. But it's fundamentally the same thing. So the use of visualization so that the act itself is deja vu is a very powerful thing. The use of affirmation, I don't do it formally anymore in the sense of 10 written on a 4x6 card, but the internal affirmative dialogue. And you will hear Trump make affirmative statements in much the same that I do in context, even in public. So in coaching, I say things automatically, like, well, that's why I get the big bucks.
Right.
The teaching I do is affirmative. So when I describe having a very intellectually and emotionally healthy relationship with money, I am affirming that, and I am affirming the specific things that make up that. In talking about selling, I will often say to somebody, I can get a check out of a rock. And I can if I have to. I don't have to do that much anymore, but I can do it. So visualization, affirmation, the use of affirmative language internally and externally, clarity. Clarity is, about who you are and what you are and what it is you're out to accomplish and who you want in and who you want out. All of that, it ties to these things. And it is an evolutionary process. And so most people are well served by, at least for some period of time, being in a formalized environment where this is worked on. For some people, that's therapy. For some people, that's one-on-one coaching. For a lot of people, that's being in a coaching and mastermind group that is about this. For some, although it's much more difficult to make it work, it's about an ad hoc group of 3 or 4 people who get together to work on these things. And you'd have to go back 30 years. But 30 years ago, I did all those things. Participated in programmed approaches to this that now are conditioned core competencies.
Right. And as you're well aware, and maybe the folks who are listening aren't well aware of, we've got a very cool group at GKIC Peak Performers, which people can apply for and learn more about. I'll give some information about that in just a second. But Dan, one last question for you. And recently we were together, and you gave a great analogy, and it kind of ties in perfectly what we were just talking about joining a group that can help you out. in your analogy was when it came to working out, someone can buy a piece of equipment. And can you give that analogy again? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Well, so way back, Weight Watchers, which was created by a woman largely inspired by cybernetics. What they quickly discovered in Weight Watchers is that losing weight in isolation, sticking to a diet in isolation is extremely difficult. And so Weight Watchers, almost from the beginning, used reinforcement by group meetings and a weight loss buddy, which also, by the way, was a referral mechanism, but that doesn't negate its validity. And so almost everybody in Weight Watchers for many years went to meetings and had a weight loss buddy. And it's, for the large part, it's why Weight Watchers continues to be, has the highest rate of efficacy of any program. And so if you think about fitness, yeah, you can work out at home, and you don't really even need equipment. You know, you need some soup cans and a rope, and but you know, most people don't stick to that. All home fitness equipment is made with the handles pointing up, so the laundry doesn't fall off on the floor. The most so if you get somebody to regularly go to the gym, then they have a higher likelihood of effectiveness. If you get them to go with a buddy, they have an even higher likelihood of effectiveness. And the programs like Iron Tribe, where they are in group, by far have the highest degree of effectiveness. And it's about, you know, friendly and competitive accountability, which happens in any good coaching group and in any good business group. So it happens in Titanium, the group for info marketers that I administer. It happens in Peak. So it is about accountability. It is about competitiveness. It is about recognition. It is about being with people who actually appreciate what you're trying to achieve and what you're going through to achieve it. So all of those factors are reinforcing. And when you consider everything that somebody encounters on a day-to-day basis, that is the opposite of that. That is a influence that will pull them away from what they're trying to achieve. Then it makes the reinforcement all the more important.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dan, loved this call. We're going to do another one at some point where we can, because I didn't even touch upon all the questions I had for you. But thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your knowledge in this very, very important area, which I think a lot of people overlook. So thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with Dan Kennedy. If you love hearing in on these lost Dan Kennedy talks and speeches and calls, then please let someone else know about this podcast. That's how you can help it to grow. And the more it grows, the more free Dan Kennedy we can bring to you. Also, Dan would love to give you the most incredible free gift ever, designed to help you make maximum money in minimum time. Now, this free gift comes with almost $20,000 in pure money-making information for free, just for saying maybe. You can get this gift from Dan right now at nobsletter.com. Not only will you get the $20,000 gift, you're also going to get a subscription to 2 marketing newsletters that will be hand-delivered by the mailman to your mailbox each and every month. One from Dan Kennedy and one from me, Russell Brunson. To get this gift and your subscription, go to nobsletter.com right now.